Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eric, and today I have been given 5 minutes to raise awareness about queer cognitive dissonance in higher STEM education, a byproduct of the CisSTEM. This summer, the Workland School of Education very graciously provided me with the opportunity to conduct my first solo research project. And as a queer person and pre-service teacher myself, I wanted my project to address an issue that has affected not only me and my own academic journey, but also countless queer friends of mine. This persistent feeling that STEM, as an overwhelmingly hypermasculine, heteronormative institution, is incompatible with our queer identities. The good news is that we are not alone. The bad news? Well, we are not alone. See, this uncomfortable feeling that I mentioned has to do with cognitive dissonance, a tense psychological state that arises when we grapple with beliefs, attitudes, and values that contradict, or when we engage in actions that go against our beliefs, attitudes, or values. When I was reviewing literature around the queer experience in higher STEM education, it became apparent to me that, although researchers had not yet been able to name it, they were all speaking fundamentally to the concept of cognitive dissonance. So, abiding by the guidelines proposed by Arksey and O'Malley, I sought to fuse the worlds of psychology, STEM, and queer studies, and conduct a scoping review exploring the extent to which queer students experience cognitive dissonance within post-secondary STEM institutions, and the ways through which they act to reduce it, which, according to cognitive dissonance theory, is what humans are naturally inclined to attempt. Before we get into the findings, however, I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you are a queer STEM student yourself. Looking around, you see only white, cisgender, heterosexual men in charge. Your classmates are comprised mostly of men. On multiple occasions, you've overheard your male peers making inappropriate comments about women, and they regularly make fun of the way you dress and the way you sound. But when you've reported all of this to the administration, nothing happens. There are no queer role models to look up to, making you feel like there's no place for you here. There are almost never any connections made between life outside of the classroom and the curricula. So you begin to feel like STEM is completely detached from any conceivable sociocultural and political significance. A number of your professors have blatantly rejected the use of pronouns. And you don't even feel safe going to the bathroom, with no gender-neutral bathrooms available. As a result, you feel totally unsupported, unaccommodated, subordinated, and othered. And you begin to suffer mental anguish over your experience of an academic space perceived as almost allergic to queerness in relation to your decision to, nonetheless, occupy such a space. That is the queer experience of cognitive dissonance in post-secondary STEM education. Now, there are 3 ways that queer STEM students go about navigating their cognitive dissonance: by fitting in, fighting, or fleeing. And to explain this, I'm going to be using the metaphor of water. Those whose primary focus is to fit in are essentially trying to stay afloat. They selectively disclose or refrain from disclosing their sexual and gender identities. They self-police their presentation of gender and sexuality, enacting traditional patriarchal gender roles. And they ground themselves in cushy, idyllic projections of a future in which the relegation of queer people in STEM spaces is no more, without actually doing anything to render that dream a reality. Other queer STEM students, however, champion the fight against STEM sisterhood by making waves. They step out of the closet proudly and unapologetically. They cultivate meaningful relationships with other 2S LGBTQIA+ people and allies of their community, building social capital. And they set out to drive radical social transformation by, for example, refusing to occupy positions in queer-phobic organizations, designing their own queer STEM spaces, developing justice and equity-oriented career goals, or simply persisting, making their presence normative. Lastly, the remainder of queer STEM students decide to flee, sailing away from their academic and professional dreams, either an act of self-empowerment or submission. But, you may ask, why is this important? Well, especially in light of the universality of the queer experience of cognitive dissonance in STEM spaces, and the rise of anti-trans legislature, hate crimes against queer people, far-right hate groups, and challenges to anti-discrimination laws today, we as a community have to tackle this problem as one. Now, my time is almost up here, but I want to thank you all for taking 5 minutes out of your day to become more educated about this topic. And I want to call upon you to pass on what you have learned today to those around you. Thanks for listening.